Music was always a part of my life, really. Basically, my dad, he's got a huge record collection, always did have. He's a music fan. His way of chilling out from a hard day's work would be to put the record player on. So it was all like sort of like blues rock, like Rolling Stones, Fleetwood Mac, Vanilla Fudge, Jethro Tull. It all had guitar in it. Everything he played had a guitar solo or guitar in it. So that's kind of what I grew up with. And so even before I started playing, it was, I suppose, in my blood, really. I think the main thing I remember is just the record player always being on. It was never off, and I just really like the sound of it. So I suppose my dad had a guitar laying around the house, and I would pick it up and play with it as a kid. Didn't really know what I was doing, and then one day I dropped it, and the headstock snapped, just like clean break. He was mortified. And I was like terrified of him, when it first happened, of him finding out. And once he got over the shock of me breaking his guitar, I said, look, if I can have a guitar for my birthday, I promise I'll learn to play. So I got a guitar for my 8th birthday, and then just started listening to records and just kind of figuring it out by ear. So I'd, just go up and down the neck on a string until I found a note that sounded the same. But that first guitar was a 3/4 sized classical guitar with nylon strings. The lady in the shop said, because he's only 8, the nylon strings will be, easier on his fingers, so definitely get one of those. But yeah, I learned to play Layla on that. I mean, on nylon strings, you can't bend them. You can't bend the strings. So I was sort of sliding up and down. I ended up with this like bizarre technique of, if there was a string bend on the record I was trying to mimic, I would just slide up and down. But yeah, that was probably not the right guitar to start with, especially playing sort of blues stuff, but that's what I started with, and I kind of worked with it. You just go with what you know, and although there was a guitar club at school, they were playing stuff like, I don't know, She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain, and just like jingling on an A chord, which really wasn't my thing. I thought it just seemed really boring compared to stuff that my dad was playing at home. So I suppose I just figured it out. You just do whatever you do to get what you want. So it's like I didn't know any theory, I didn't know any of the technical side, so it was literally by ear. And I would just, every night, even if I had homework, because I got a bit older, the homework would get left, the guitar would get picked up, the record player would go on, and I'd just sit for hours just figuring it out. And it came pretty naturally, really. I never felt like it was a struggle. I think maybe because I started so young. I don't know, but yeah, it was. It just seemed like the thing to do. My dad was definitely the biggest influence in me playing music. I think if music hadn't have been a big part of the household, then yeah, my life would have probably taken a different path. I mean, even when I was a kid playing the guitar, I didn't expect to be doing what I'm doing now for a living. It's just something I did as a hobby, something I really enjoyed. And it kind of just progressed, really. I was at a school concert, I think I was 13, and I was the lead guitarist in a school production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I was playing this, it was like a Strat copy. And the music teacher had given me this part, said, right, you do the lead guitar, because that's what you do. And there was a guy in the audience who was one of the parents of one of the other kids at school, came up to me at the end and said, have you ever played a real gig? I'm like, oh, what's a gig? He says, oh, in a pub with a real band. I'm like, no. He's like, do you want to come down to the Bull's Head on Friday? Get your parents to bring you to the Bull's Head this Friday, and we'll get you up. I'm like, all right, cool. So I told my dad, and my parents took me down, and this band got me up on a couple of songs, and I was absolutely terrified, But 13, I did my first gig. And at the end of the night, they asked me to join the band and said, can you come back next week and the week after and the week after? And I ended up sort of joining this band of guys my parents' age, and I was like 13. And after that, I just started playing in bands. You meet other people, other musicians, and it kind of just went on from there, really. It was weird because I always ended up playing with people a lot older than me. Maybe because of the kind of music. I mean, when I was like 13, 14, I suppose that would have been in like late 80s, early 90s. So it was kind of like the Britpop thing. I can't remember when Oasis came out and all that kind of stuff, and Blur, but around that sort of early 90s time, anyone at school, at college who was in bands, they were just into sort of like strumming chords, whereas I wanted to play blues and guitar solos. So yeah, the people that I seemed to click with musically were definitely older people, yeah. My parents were amazing when I was younger. They would drive me everywhere, at some points, so probably when I was about 15, I was gigging regularly, probably a good 2 or 3 gigs a week, still at school. My dad was still, working full time, but they just drove me everywhere. And when I needed like a bigger amp, because I started off with like a little small practice amp, clearly on a gig that's not going to cut it. So then we got a bigger amp and a bigger one and a bigger one. I remember one day in the music shop, my mum said, right, we've already bought 3 new amps. Is that it now? Is there no more? We don't need any more amps. We spent enough money on this. And my dad was like, no, he definitely needs a bigger one. We need a Marshall now. So my parents were amazing, very supportive, drove me around, helped me buying the gear that I needed. And then as I started to get part-time jobs and stuff, I got like a paper round, and then I worked in a bakery part-time when I was at college, and I just bit by bit over the years sort of like paid them back. But no, without my parents, yeah, it would have been a very different story. To start with, when I was playing in bands, it was kind of like 60s and 70s covers bands. Then when I think I was around 16, somebody had suggested there was a jam session in Nottingham. So living in Leicester, Nottingham was like, it's only half an hour away. Every Wednesday night there's a blues jam session, so you can go and you can get up with people that like blues. And that's when it kind of got really interesting for me, because I was meeting musicians that were a lot more into what I was into and wanted to play like, Hendrix stuff and Clapton and that kind of thing. Because I was going out gigging, music was definitely the focus. So, I would do my schooling, I'd do my homework. I did okay in my exams, could have done better, but, I've never really needed it. so I've ended up doing music. I never planned to do music as a living. So I did make the effort at school, but yeah, I was kind of glad to leave, if I'm honest. I started playing guitar when I was 8. I didn't start singing properly, as in like trying to actually sing, until I was 18 or 19, because up until that point I didn't need to. It was just the guitar. I never even thought about singing. But then going to the jam sessions, the blues jam sessions, a lot of people would get up and sing and play, and a few people just took me to one side and said, look, are you going to, at some point, are you going to sing one? I'm like, no, I don't sing, I only play. And I said, well, look, I don't know who it was, how it was said, but in a roundabout way, I was told that, if you only play guitar, you're always going to be playing guitar for someone else. If you sing, especially if you want to write stuff as well, if you sing, you can front a band and you can kind of call the shots, and it's kind of your show. You can, do whatever you want. So I'm like, okay. So I started singing, and singing didn't come anywhere near as easily as the guitar playing did. And it's something that I've had to work at. And I used to hate it. I used to hate singing because I thought, I just want to play guitar. But then I went for a couple of lessons and basically got told, you're doing it all wrong. You're singing in the wrong key, all that sort of stuff. So I think I had 2 lessons, and the woman said, right, okay, so that's that note you're trying to hit there where you're literally screaming, like, let's take the key of the song down a notch and try it again. And I try it, and she's like, yeah, that sounds better. So know what your range is, and then develop it from there. And over the years, I have worked on the singing. It's something I've had to work at. It hasn't come as naturally as the guitar did, but apparently I got told when I was younger, although your voice is probably not as strong as your guitar playing at this stage, you've got good phrasing, so it's worth you know, developing it, because you've got the phrasing and you know what you want to sing. You just don't have the, you know, the technique or whatever to do it at the moment, but you can get that if you work to.
I've got a kind-hearted woman. She'd do anything in this world for me. Yeah, she's a kind-hearted woman. She'd do anything in this world for me.
I think it was 1997 or 1998, so I would have been like, I don't know, like 21 or so. I'd done a blues festival in the UK called Colne Blues Festival, and the organiser had sent my self-produced CD to a record label in Germany. To this guy called Thomas Ruff that owns a label called Ruff Records. And Thomas got in touch and said, oh, I really, really like this. You've got some of your own stuff on it. Have you got any more original songs? I said, oh yeah, I've got loads. Okay, send them over. Sent over a load of songs. He really liked it. He said, right, I'd like to get you in the studio, offer you a record deal. But I was still working, doing my day job. So there was a decision that had to be made. You know, do I quit the day job and go full time with this, or do I just keep it as a, you know, as a hobby type thing? And I decided to just quit the day job and give it a go. And that was 25 years ago. I signed the deal in March '98 with Ruff Records, and the agreement was I was going to go into the studio and record an album of all my original stuff that I'd got up until that point. And I think, I don't know, 10 out of 12 tracks on that first album were all mine. And I'd never been in the studio for more than a couple of days before that. I'd done a couple of albums earlier, but you know, it was literally, you know, go in the studio, book the studio for a day, go in and play the live set from start to end, mix it and go home and release it. that was my experience of doing an album. Then when I signed to Ruff Records, Thomas said, right, you're going to be in the studio for 2 weeks. I'm like, what are we going to do for 2 weeks? Like, do we need 2 weeks? He said, oh yeah, and you're going to have a producer. I didn't know what a producer was. And he said, he sent me a couple of names, and one of the names was Jim Gaines. I'm like, producer called Jim Gaines. So my dad starts going through his CD collection. He's like, hang on a minute, hang on. There's an album here, it's produced by Jim Gaines, it's Albert Collins. I'm like, right, cool. And then he's looking through, he's like, hang on a minute, there's a Stevie Ray Vaughan album here, this guy is a serious player. So the first album that I did for Ruff Records was produced by Jim, which was amazing, because I was a big Stevie Ray fan. I still am, you know, but, you know, being sort of 21 or whatever, and you get to work with someone like that that's, you know, worked with some of the greatest blues guitarists of all time, you know, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. So the first day in the studio was rehearsals. We had a full day of rehearsals. My experience was you have a day of everything, but the first day was just playing the songs through so he could hear it. And he sat there with his notepad and his pen, and he said, right, okay, so that song there, we need to trim down that bit and cut that bit out, and that's too long. And because we were just doing the live versions. And of course, you know, when you're listening to a CD, an album at home, you don't necessarily need a 3-minute guitar intro, which is kind of what I was doing at the time. So he said, right, we'll cut that down. And he kind of just pushed me to sort of get the best out of me, but in a really kind of a way. The one thing I learned about Jim and a lot of producers I've worked since is that the good ones, they have a way of getting the good stuff out of you without you feeling pressured. And if they think you're not in the right zone, they won't say that's not good enough. They'll just say, oh, let's try something else. You know, they'll just shift your attention somewhere else. And Jim was really good at that, really good. With the songwriting, I guess I suppose, a life writer. I write just about stuff that I know about, stuff that I've seen, stuff that, you know, people I know, people I hear about, just anything that's real life. there's very, very little I've written, as long as I've been doing it, that's kind of made up completely. It's normally as a result of something I've seen or something that's happened or something I've experienced. And musically, I guess I'm trying to match the music with the lyrical content. So what comes first? I get asked this a lot. What comes first, the lyrics or the music? Every song I've ever written has kind of arrived from a different point. I've tried to reverse engineer it and actually figure out, right, how do I do this so that when I do need to write, I can almost like, switch it on, but I can't. And I think I've realised that as a songwriter, you're just going to get these sparks of inspiration that just come out of nowhere, that can be, there can be triggers all around us all day, and you never know when you're going to get that moment. But if you do, you have to like capture it in some way. So like the notes section on my phone is like chock full of like lyric ideas. Voice recorder on my phone, it's got loads of little things of me like singing into my phone. I'll like pull over in a lay-by and I'll just like, la 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 into my phone. I'll listen to it a week later and think, what the hell was that? But there's every now and again there's going to be something where you're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I was with Rough Records for, I think it was close on 10 years, nine to 10 years. And then, so it would have been about 2007, I was looking around for something else, just because I'd done like 4 or 5 albums with Rough. We had a great relationship. I still get on with the guy. We have a good relationship. But I felt like it was just time for something different. I was looking for some management as well, because up until that point, I've been doing it all myself. And although I had a record label, there's very much Rough Records like artists to be self-sufficient and, do their own marketing, promotion. And it's just, it's too much. You can't do everything. You can't be an artist, a songwriter, market yourself, book your gigs. I mean, you have to do that when you start out. It's the only way, because, if you don't do it, nobody else does. But by that point, 10 years into my professional career, I was pretty burnt out with it. And so I felt I wanted to work with a different label and also, just look for some management. So I ended up working with an English label called Manhattan Records, and the guy that runs that, Alan Robinson. Alan took me on as, he was my manager, and he basically just took the whole business machine off me and said, right, you concentrate on touring, writing good songs and, being good on stage. You concentrate on that. I'll take care of everything else. And it was great. It felt like, the first few years of that, it was like having a 2-year holiday. And I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this again. Because at the back end of the Rough Records thing, I just felt burnt out. I thought, I can't keep doing this. I'm tired, But then Alan took me on. He was booking the gigs, he was marketing it, doing the label as well. It was all in-house with him. And I did a couple of albums with Alan, which worked really, really well. Then in 2013, my wife and me, we decided to take things in-house, and she would take over the logistics and management side. Very Spinal Tap, at the time. A lot of people, there's a lot of skeptics out there that were like, oh, I see what's happening here, right? The girlfriend takes over, right, okay. I'm like, well, she'd been coming to the gigs for, as long as I was working with Alan, Steph had always come along to the gigs. And she got to know most of the promoters. She would be chatting to the fans. And she's quite a friendly person. She's good at, sort of interacting with people. And we talked about how the whole business was working. The music industry changes, so much every year. At that point in 2013, we felt like we could take it in-house. So I sort of, split with Alan and his label. And Steph set up our own label, Straight Talking Records. We did the first album, Home, and it could have all gone wrong, could have all gone terribly wrong, but it didn't, and it worked really well. And so we did another one, and we've just released a third one just before Christmas last year. Do you know what? In all the years I've been doing this, the industry has changed massively. It's bonkers now. Like everything now, it's very much, as I see it, it's very social media. There's a lot of stuff online. Basically, if you're not online, you're kind of falling behind. When I first started touring around Europe, I mean, the first few tours I did back in '98 and the early noughties, we were driving round Germany, following bands around as a support act, and we didn't have a sat-nav. Sat-navs weren't around then, not that I was aware of anyway. So we had a map book, and you had one person sat up front, someone driving, and how we got to the gigs, I don't know. I don't know how we actually managed it, but you don't know any different. And before social media, before Facebook and Instagram and all that, I remember every couple of months I'd send a newsletter out. It'd be like, I'd make it in Windows 95 or whatever it was at the time. This is what we've been doing, these are the gigs, and you'd photocopy 2,500 of them and send them to 2,500 people in the post. And it cost you a fortune, and you just hope that people will get these through the letterbox, open it up and go, all right, Aynsley's playing at the Road next week, let's go and see him. Whereas now, you put an Instagram post up or a Facebook, and it's so different. Everything's changed, and you do have to, I guess you've got to move with the times. And the social media side, I struggled with, certainly to start with. I'm kind of a bit more accepting of it now. You've just got to keep up with stuff. You've got to move with the times. The other thing, that's changed massively, apart from how you market your gigs and how you obviously communicate with the fan base, is the medium by which people can access music. It used to be, once upon a time, cassette tapes and vinyl, and then it was CDs. Then didn't we have minidisc at one point or something? And the format's changed and changed and changed. And it's like now vinyl's obviously coming back, but streaming and all that kind of stuff, like Spotify and downloads from iTunes or whatever, that's all changed so much. So now, I mean, I sound really old, don't I? Back in the day, you had CDs and people would buy a CD, and if they didn't buy your CD, they wouldn't be able to download it anywhere. Then you got downloads, and then of course you got Spotify. So people can hear stuff for free, pretty much. So trying to sell your music as a product to, the audience has become, I think, increasingly challenging for all artists, really, because I think there's this kind of almost like throwaway thing now, where people don't give music the same chance they used to. I suppose, I mean, it's before my time really, but the whole thing of with vinyls, people sitting, someone's got a new vinyl, a new album of their favourite artist, and they'd invite friends round, and you'd have a night listening to the new album. Whereas now people are like, skip, fast forward, no, oh, that's all right, no, that's boring. And it's this whole, it's a bit like social media, it's like this you have to get people's attention straight away. And you either follow that trend or you stick to what you kind of believe, what's true. So in terms of the whole 3-minute pop song, I've never gone for that because it's not what I do. I've realised that what I do, there's an audience for it. So if a song starts and it's got a minute of guitar at the start before the vocals come in, that's what I do. And people seem to like what I do enough that I'm still, still doing it now. So there's certain things in the music industry that I've had to follow and keep up with, and other things which I will still, certainly when it comes to the music, I will still do what I do. relying really on the people at the gigs to keep you on the road, and people still do come to gigs, and we still do, you know, reasonable merchandise, and it's still a big part of the whole business machine. And I think back in the day, you know, some of the bigger touring acts, you know, the merchandise is going to be a make or break whether the tour works or not, because the production costs for the tour can be so much that without the merchandise you wouldn't survive. So, I mean, like, we're on the road at the moment around the UK. We're playing tonight in Edinburgh at the Caves, and we've just got some new T-shirts done. I think we've got like 4 or 5 different designs. I've got loads of albums, although on this tour most of them have actually sold out. So, which again is a great sign, you know, that it does sell, but we don't sell the amount of CDs, for instance, that we used to. Like, if you had a new album out, you could guarantee, if you had a full room, you probably do 60, 70 CDs a night, whereas now it's probably 30 or 40. So it's still good, but it's not like it was. I think blues and guitar music right now, it seems to be very, particularly in the UK, it's still like an underground scene. There are artists out there that are doing blues and blues rock. Like, obviously, the most obvious name is Joe Bonamassa. Joe, the way that they've done that, him and his team, of, you know, he's doing incredibly well, and he's obviously pulling massive numbers in. And that is guitar, you know, it's guitar blues rock. That's what he does. So there is an audience out there, but it's very hard to get up to that level where he is. And I think it's guitar music, certainly in the UK, it doesn't seem to be in the mainstream. And I think at some point it might come back. I mean, you know, I think even like the Britpop thing of the 90s, that was very guitar, although it wasn't guitar solos, it was, you know, guys with an image and a guitar rocking out. It was cool. And it's like Oasis, you know, I've mentioned that already, but Oasis, you know, everybody went out and bought, you know, Epiphone guitars like the one that Noel plays, you know, because, and it's like Ed Sheeran, you know, Ed Sheeran's got his own signature guitar because people see Ed Sheeran with a guitar, like, oh, he's playing a guitar, I want a guitar like that. But the guitar, I suppose, like the guitar hero thing, the guitar solo thing, like Hendrix or Clapton, I don't think it's not been around for a long time. In terms of the future, I really don't know what's going to happen. The one thing I do know is that I will carry on doing what I'm doing until I can't do it. I don't plan to retire. I will just keep going until I drop, basically, because even if I wasn't doing it for a living, even if I wasn't playing music for a career or whatever, I would still play guitar. I would still be as passionate about guitar. I still love playing. I absolutely love it. It's a feeling like no other. You just can't explain what it's like to be on stage. Again, playing my own gig where it's my own music. I'm kind of spoilt, really, where I basically get to go and do gigs playing whatever I want, how I want, when I want. And because we've got the label in house, and my wife Steph, she runs all the logistics of the tours, and it's kind of, without sounding corny, I'm kind of living the dream. And I still love it just as much, if probably more now, because I've been going for so long that, you know, when we do go out and tour, you know, I know there's going to be people that will come out, you know, thankfully, to see what we're doing. And I love standing on stage and playing guitar and turning my amp up really loud and seeing people smile at that. And you can't really, there's no substitute for that.
How are you doing? You all right? Thanks for coming out to see us.